The French and Indian War was between the British and French, lasting from 1756 to 1763. It ended with the Treaty of Paris, where land was divided up between the French, Spanish, and English. The French lost Canadian and American territory, as well as trading with India. The Spanish got all of the French land west of the Mississippi and lost Florida. The British gained all of the land that the French had in Canada and commercial dominance with India. Salutary neglect ended, leading to laws and acts. The Proclamation Line of 1763 gave a border for the British, stating that if you went west of the Appalachian Mountains, you were no longer protected by the king. This saved them from the Pontiac Indians. The Currency Act says that if Parliament and the king want to charge you taxes, you can't disobey and must pay them back in specie. The Quartering Act was put into place so that people would have no choice but to feed and house British soldiers. The Sugar Act was the first tax that was intended to feed money to the king. It aimed to end the smuggling of sugar and molasses from the French to Dutch West Indies. The Stamp Act was one of the biggest acts that was a direct cause of the American Revolution. It puts a stamp on anything that is a paper product or important document. If there was a stamp on anything, it showed you that you would have to pay a tax on the product.
The Virginia Resolves were written by Patrick Henry, and in it he's angered over the taxes and initiates a boycotting of British goods. He stresses over internal taxation. The colonists want the same rights that the citizens of Britain have. The Declaration of Rights and Grievances was written by the members of the first Congress in America, the Stamp Act Congress. This document states that the colonists deserve the right to trial by jury of their peers, and that they should have the same rights as those in Britain. The Stamp Act Congress was the first Congress organized to push back against Britain. They formed a unity against the Crown's law. The Declaratory Act was a way for the Crown to take away the Stamp Act without losing respect from the citizens of England. The Townshend Act is like an external tax to the salary of the royal governors. It put duties on items like glass, silk, lead, tea, and paint. The Letters from a Farmer in Pennsylvania were written by John Dickinson. Its main objective was to protest the idea that the colonists paid taxes but did not have a say in Parliament, and basically push for the idea of no taxation without representation. The Boston Massacre was a huge turning point leading up to the start of the Revolution. Colonists were taunting lobsterbacks, or redcoats as the colonists would call the British soldiers. In retaliation, the British fired at the unarmed colonists and killed 5.
Common Sense was written by Thomas Paine, stating his opinion on the relationship between America and Great Britain. He says Great Britain was a bad influence on America, and that they didn't need Europe to be successful. Samuel Adams and the Sons of Liberty started spreading propaganda on why America needed their independence, resulting in the colonists becoming fired up. The Tea Act was enforced by the Crown to give the British East India Company a monopoly on tea in the colonies. It actually would have reduced tea prices, but the colonists knew the British were trying to pull a fast one. The Boston Tea Party was a protest to the Tea Act. The Sons of Liberty tossed 347 barrels of British East India Company tea into the Boston Harbor. The Intolerable Acts followed the Boston Tea Party. These acts were consequences for dumping the tea into the Boston Harbor. There were 4 parts: closing Boston Harbor, rescinding the charter of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Anyone accused of trying to kill a British officer will be arrested and taken to England for trial, and reenacting the Quartering Act.
As a result, the First Continental Congress was formed. All 13 colonies were represented. The goal behind it was not war but independence. The Suffolk Resolves were for the colonists and did 4 things. They denounced the Intolerable Acts, started a military for each colony for defensive reasons, then they stopped paying British taxes, and they stopped buying British goods. There were small battles at Lexington and Concord. The colonists lost the battle at Lexington, but won the one at Concord. The Second Continental Congress was formed after these battles, but were not formed for independence. They wrote the Declaration of the Causes for Taking Up Arms and the Olive Branch Petition. The Olive Branch Petition was a last-second plea for peace from the king. When they reached England, war had basically started. The Declaration of Independence was the official start of the war, and on July 4th, 1776, the American Revolution began.